Our final session of the day, paper of this session, is by Gina Barney, and I'm sure we all wish her well and a speedy recovery. Dr. Gina Barney has been in the lift industry for nearly 55 years, has seen significant technical challenges in her lifetime, especially in the industry, and during her career has led research team at Manchester University with a PhD student, Sergio dos Santos. They developed the first interactive simulation and design suite of programs in 1972, some of the elements of which can be seen in Elevate today. They published the classic traffic design method in 1975 and 77, and in 1977 published the full specification of adaptive call allocation, extending Leoport's 1961 work. This was fortunate, as this publication prevented a Japanese lift company from patenting it. Both Lutfi and Jonathan, speakers in this session, were in her team and gained their PhDs in Manchester. In 1990, Dr. Joris Schroeder of Schindler created Myconic 10 based on Hall call allocation, which was much derided at the time, but by 2000, destination control was everywhere, and I think we can attest to that today. She changed the basis of traffic design from weight-based to space-based, which I think is very fitting following the paper that we've just had, and introduced the body area index in the SIBSI guide 2020. And we have Dr. Gina Barney's presentation in the form of a video.
My paper solves a problem that no longer exists. It did exist in the 1920s and continued until the 1960s, when attendants were removed from the lift cars as automatic lift doors had become available, together with passengers being able to select their destination floor using push-button control. The paper also illustrates green features with smaller equipment, reduction in embodied carbon, and lower running costs, less CO2 emissions. For safety, CEN agreed Table 6 in BS 5655 Part 1 1986 and EN81 Part 1 1985 to avoid overloading cars. But it was not until technology caught up in 1998 with EN81-1 and 298 that Table 6 could be revised, but it was not. At that time, the CEN experts were blindsided and failed to do this. After all, this was a traffic design problem, not a safety matter. How did this all happen? Mr. Otis invented a safety gear in 1853, and lifts began to be installed in ever-increasing numbers into high-rise buildings, which had been made possible by the use of steel frames. By the 1920s, lifts were commonplace in offices, but as traffic design was yet to be invented, the numbers of lifts installed was aghast, and there was usually not enough lifts installed, and many offices were underlifted. To solve the problem of getting workers to their work floor, owners used the lift attendants to squeeze passengers in. There had to be attendants, as the drive control was a car switch requiring some skill to operate. The attendant's job was to push people to the back of the car until they could close the landing doors and depart. The attendants were helped by human dispatchers on the landings, who literally pushed people into the cars. Passengers obediently obeyed as they wanted to get to work. It was obvious that the lifts could become overloaded. So how did this all start? It started in the US at the A17 Code Committee in the 1920s. They originally said the car loading would be a US adult male, weighing 150 pounds, standing on 2 square feet. That is a loading of 75 pounds per square foot. They applied this linear relationship even to large lifts. But the car attendants and the landing dispatchers were squeezing too many passengers into the larger cars and overloading them. In 1925, the A17 experts became so concerned they moved from linear car loading to non-linear car loading. This slide shows more detail. The x-axis is the effective area of the platform in square feet, now called available car area. Curve A and the left-hand y-axis gives the carrying capacity in pounds. Dividing this by 150 gives the number of passengers carried. This could be marked on the y-axis. Curve B and the right-hand y-axis give the car loading in pounds per square foot. It runs from 60 pounds per square foot for small cars to 100 pounds per square foot for larger cars, seen here by the A71-20 graph. This slide shows the progression of car loading over the period 1925 to the present time. The top set is what was happening in the US A17.1 code, and the bottom set shows the British progression, which started in 1935. Over this 100 years, the 1925 chart was progressively tweaked. For example, the 50 square feet, £4,400 relationship became 50 square feet and £5,000. Later, the £100 per square foot maximum loading was increased to £127.5 per square foot. In 1955, George Gibson produced equations for the A17 code. By 1984-5, the British and American graphs were similar. A17 used formula, BSI Sen had produced a table 6. 1985 was when the combined BS 5655 Part 1 1986, EN81 Part 1 1985 was published. Because there were no attendants or dispatchers to boss passengers, the passengers declined to enter crowded cars in order to maintain their private space. Many observers reported lift cars do not fill to capacity. Analysing Table 6, it is clear that as the cars get bigger, the space allocated to each passenger gets smaller. The range is from 0.24 square metres per passenger in a small car, but in a large car the same passenger only has 0.15 square metres of space. This is clearly not acceptable to passengers, and they decline to board. It's physically possible, but very unpleasant. This slide shows what the area should have been and what the standard required. 2 square metres of space have been removed. The societal and behaviour changes that occurred once passengers could exercise free will whether to board a lift or not presented problems for traffic designers. The only guidance traffic designers had was the maximum number of passengers shown on the capacity plate based on how many 75 kilogram people were required to reach rated load. Formal traffic design procedures did not exist. R.S. Phillips, British Post Office, set out in Chapter 11 of his book Electric Lifts the components of analysis, defining such terms as probable number of stops, round trip time, and the waiting interval, now called passenger average waiting time. There was no procedure to support it. George Dracosh, in his book Elevators and Escalators in 1967, showed a step-by-step approach, but no formalisation. My research team at Manchester University offered a mathematical approach in 1975 in reference 18, which has become the classical calculation method fully written up by Barney and Dos Santos in the book Lift Traffic Analysis, Design and Control in 1977. Once Table 1.1, now Table 6, was published in the 1985 standards, traffic designers had better information. It became clear to me in the late 1980s that 33 passengers weighing 75 kilograms could not get into a 2,500 kilogram lift, nor could 17 passengers weighing 75 kilograms get into a 75 kilogram lift. The basic concept of traffic design had to change from weighing passengers to allocating space to them. The space per passenger weighing 75 kilograms using Fruin's work can be determined as 0.21 square meters. I presented Table 3.4 in CIBSE Guide D 1993, Transportation Systems in Buildings, to show the maximum occupancy. 1275 kilograms was 14 passengers on a 2.95 square meter platform at 0.21 square meters per passenger. The 2,500 kilogram car managed to get 23.8 passengers on a 5 square meter platform at 0.21 square meters passengers per car. there was a reduction in the numbers presented. The change of the basic concept of traffic design from weighing passengers to allocating space to them was challenged by industry peers and found to be the correct procedure. By 2000, expert traffic designers used the area-based method. For example, a traffic design requires a lift to accommodate a maximum of 20 persons. The area required is 20 times 0.21, 4.2 square meters. Table 6 requires a 2,000 kilogram lift, despite the fact that the maximum weight of 20 passengers is only 1,500 kg. For example, what is the maximum number of passengers a 1275 kg lift can accommodate, which has an available area of 2.95 square meters? The lift can accommodate 2.95 over 0.21, 14 passengers. What should be done? Increase the available car area associated with each rated load in Table 6. This slide shows this. The rated load of some commonly installed lifts is shown in column 1. To meet the rated capacity requirement of 0.21 square meter per person, the maximum available area to be provided is in column 2. Note they are larger. As an example, a lift with a rated load of 2,500 kg to the old Table 6 was 5 square meters. New Table 6 is 7 square meters. Dividing 0.21 gives the new capacity rating of 7 over 0.21 equals 33 persons weighing 75 kg for a 2,500 kg load. The last column indicates the average number of passengers that traffic designers would use. I think the said experts in 1998 were blindsided to revising 1998 Table 6. Table 6 would be regarded by the said experts as helping traffic designers. In the 1920s, there was no reliable load weighing and overload detection. From the 1970s onwards, technology improved. By 1998, it was mature enough to be included in the standards. EN81-20, 1998, sets out two important safety requirements. The first is load control, which deals with accidental overloading. The second is rope traction, which deals with deliberate overloading, i.e. passenger misuse. This slide shows extracts from EN81-20, 2020. Overloads occur when the rated load is exceeded by 10%, and the risk of slip occurs when the rated load is exceeded by 25%. To risk assess my proposal, a default passenger for both CEN EN81 series and the ISO EN8100 series weighs 75 kg and occupies a space of 0.21 square meters. Taking a commonly installed lift with a rated load of 1,600 kg as an example, let's assume a group of irresponsible persons decide to overload the lift. They may be under the influence of drink or drugs or simply skylarking. How many people can we get in there? 21.3 passengers can be accommodated in a lift with a rated load of 1,600 kilograms, having an available car area of 4.4 square meters. An overload would occur with an extra 160 kilogram of passengers entering. This is just over 2 passengers. The personal space they will have has reduced from 0.21 to 0.19. Bodies will start to touch. Whilst overloads are mainly accidental, further passenger entry is deliberate and dangerous. Some of the irresponsible people ignore the overload warning and continue entering. This is passenger misuse. In the example, 3 more people can bring the payload above 125 rated load, and the lift could slip from the landing. To achieve entry, all passengers would be squeezed into 0.17 meters of space, which is physically unacceptable. This slide shows the result of a spreadsheet risk assessment. Although passengers already in the lift might allow a few more in to reach 10% overload, it is unlikely they would tolerate further passengers to reach crush conditions. Because the new proposal lifts are smaller rated load, they do not contain as much embodied carbon. As the driver's equipment is smaller, the running costs will be smaller, i.e. less CO2 generation. Here is a summary. What started as a linear relationship ended as non-linear. It became non-linear as human dispatchers on the landing in the car squeezed passengers in. The passengers went willingly as they didn't want to lose a quarter of an hour's pay. Each small non-linear revision failed to review historical reasons. Then push-button controls and automatic doors arrived in the 1950s, and the attendants were removed and the passengers drove themselves. Behavioural change led society to become more relaxed, flexi-time arrived, travel comfort was desired, hence cars ceased to fill densely. The loading requirements in the 1998 Table 6 are those of the 1985-86. The proposal to amend Table 6 benefits traffic designers who now use the space passengers occupy, not what they weigh, to find the rated capacity of a lift. Comfort is achieved. The current Table 6 solves a problem that no longer exists. Here is the chance now to revise EN81-20 for a win-win result. We have come full circle. The area requirement in 1923 of 2 square feet, 0.19 metres squared, for a 150-pound, 68-kilogram man can be scaled to an adult weighing 75 kilograms and requiring 0.21 square metres area to stand on. There is a danger that some experts will not want to make such a change for new lifts, as they are very conservative. They do listen to specialist experts, so there may be hope. All's well that ends well.